Good morning everyone, and welcome to Homestead for a Living. I recently did a video where we talked about some of the cash crops we've been trying from our little 4-acre property, which is realistically more like an acre of growing space. We've been on a quest for the past couple years to find out how do we start a farm on a small acreage with very little financial input and really start to make a living from our property. And so in order to try things out, we've been throwing everything at the wall. We've been trying dozens and dozens of different things that we can grow on this property and raise on this property, as well as things that we can create. In our quest to find out what works for us, what works for our land. Some has been pretty unsuccessful, some of it's been quite successful, and we've tried selling things through online like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, Etsy, as well as our own websites like hollowtopfarms.com, and physical sales at pop-up farm stands at different homesteading festivals. We now have a greenhouse site, so kind of a roadside location, as well as just word of mouth and selling around our community. So lots of different ways of trying to sell things, and we've been seeing what works and what doesn't. So I just kind of want to talk about that to hopefully spur some ideas for you, because I really think that every homesteader should be pursuing financial self-sufficiency as well as food self-sufficiency. So let's talk about some of the first products we tried on this farm, and that was animal products. Because we have to raise animals for part of our system, we need their manure, we need eggs, we need dairy, and we need meat. We currently have ducks, chickens, and goats. They're all hanging out here. This is William the Conqueror, our very good buck, very friendly, very good at his job of making little baby goats. And you can hear the quacking in the background. That's our ducks and chickens. So chickens were one of our good early products. We bought a small home incubator, I think about 36 capacity incubator, because we wanted to grow out our own meat birds as well as expand our flock. And so we had already tried eggs, and that was not a good product. Around here we were getting about $4 or $5 a dozen, and that's for organic free-range eggs, and that didn't really justify the work and the money put in. There was very little profit margin in that. And then each sale of eggs, while it's fun to talk to people, it's about a half-hour conversation, and so half an hour to make maybe 50 cents to $1 in profit, it's not realistic, it's not sustainable. So instead we started incubating those eggs, and with just a few cents per egg of electricity input for an incubator in 21 days, you hatch a chick, which is now worth $5 or $6. And we had no problem commanding that price. So that was a good early product, and one that we're going to continue. Next year, we're going to probably get a bigger incubator, step up our flock, and sell more chickens, because that's a good one. It justifies their grain input, and we even turn a profit on that, as well as building relationships in our community and spreading chickens all over our community, which is good. We really want to build self-sufficiency around us, not just on our farm. So that was product one that did well. And then speaking of those goats back there, that's been another good one. While we're milking them for our own purposes, milk doesn't really make sense as a product for us at this small scale. The time put in would not justify the price that we could get from the milk. But the babies that come out of those goats sell really well. We've been making between $125 and $200 on baby goats. Each goat has probably 3 or 4 per year or more. All of the births have been unassisted. We just come out in the morning, we find baby goats, and when they're ready to be weaned, we sell them. And so that's been a great sideline that also pays for their grain inputs. So the animals themselves are better sellers and higher value than the actual products they produce. We consume the products they produce, and then we sell the animals. Next, I'll go ahead and talk about my nursery here. This has been our first year starting a nursery. We have this, and then we have a greenhouse site over in Centerville, Tennessee. So we've mainly focused this year on things like really low maintenance thing. I haven't gone very heavily onto apples, pears, and peaches, but rather focused on things like elderberries, hazelnuts, mulberry, things like that are blueberry, that are either native or really easy to grow in this growing region. So good sellers have been things like elderberry. People really like elderberry. That's been selling well. Mulberry has sold well. Pawpaw has sold very well. Fig has sold exceptionally well. Blueberries have sold very well. Blackberries and raspberries, less so. I bought a bunch of crab apples. Those have not sold great. I think people don't quite understand the value of crab apples. Very valuable tree. Jerusalem artichoke in pots has sold pretty well. Comfrey in pots has sold pretty well. Let's talk about comfrey for a minute. Comfrey has been a great seller. I'm sure in the YouTube space you've seen comfrey absolutely everywhere. A lot of folks are growing comfrey and selling it because it's a really cool plant with a lot of medicinal and livestock feed uses. And just also a good asset on a permaculture farm for chop and drop and mulching and green manures and such. So we've been trying, and we are still currently trying several different products, as I mentioned in my last video, such as taking these leaves when we harvest it, making powders and drying the leaves, but also then selling the root cuttings so people can propagate their own. And that is one we do sell online at hollowtopfarms.com. So that's been a great product and continues to be a great product. I don't know if eventually that market will get tapped out because everyone's kind of jumping into selling comfrey. But in the meantime, it's been really good for us and a good start. And as I mentioned, sometimes I'll put those root cuttings in 1-gallon pots and then sell that pot at festivals and at our roadside location and elsewhere. So Comfrey, that's been a great cash crop for us. Last year we did a lot more vegetable selling. We've done less so this year because we just kind of wanted to consume everything we could grow. On this site, we don't have a lot of natural water. We're up on a dry hillside. So vegetables as a cash crop isn't very good for us because of the water inputs that we have to put in. So instead, we've mainly focused this year on just eating our own vegetables, but we have sold some this year. But what we found, we're good sellers last year, and if we had like a spring or a well or cheaper water, it would make more sense. We found lettuce and greens and kales to be a good seller. We sold to a catering company, and she bought a lot of just bushels of kale from us. Sold some tomatoes, sold some cucumbers. It's not hard to sell vegetables, and if you can keep your input costs and your time inputs and things like that really low, I think vegetables, any kind of vegetable, is a really good selling product. So if we change sites at some point, get a larger acreage or anything like that, we will experiment a lot more with vegetables and probably do pretty well with that. Holly, come. Jerusalem artichoke I mentioned in the last video. That's one we have not yet tried other than in pots, and the pots have been selling, but we're going to start selling the actual tubers from our website very soon. We'll be ready to harvest those, and we'll be selling those on Etsy and our own website, probably at Hollow Top Farms, and we will experiment with that and see how those sell, but I suspect they'll do well. What seems to sell really well are the survival crops, the permaculture crops, the ones that are less common, the root cuttings and the means to grow those things. And speaking of that kind of thing, seeds have been doing pretty well. We sold some of those at festivals and such. And I want to go down more the rabbit hole of selling seeds because we are doing a lot of seed saving on our property. And if you think about a tomato, you can only sell one tomato, but how many seeds are in that tomato? That's a whole packet of seeds. So that doubles the products that you're really getting out of that. You can take that tomato, mash it up, can it, throw it in a barbecue sauce or whatever you're doing with that tomato, but then take those seeds and do something with them. So that's been another good cash crop, the seeds I think are going to be a good cash crop. We've only sold a few packets as an experiment, but we'll probably start selling those on our website as well because that's a shippable product. And that's an important distinction. Are you growing things that can be shipped and sold to the online market? Because then you've just opened up your customer base to 7 billion people instead of just the people around you in your community. So we really like to work on physical sales as well as internet sales. We don't want to depend on the internet, but it's a great force multiplier. Canna lily, that's been another one, fun one, easy to propagate. We'll probably sell root cuttings from that, and that will also be shippable. That's a great permaculture plant. Pollinators love it. I see hummingbirds and bees on those flowers all day long. The leaves are edible, the tubers are edible. They're a great barrier if you're trying to grow a really fast barrier for privacy, as you can see on the house. All those growing up to the eaves, those are all canna lilies, and they've all done really great for us. Let's see what else we can think of. I haven't done much of this. I did this more at my last property, and I kind of did this early on in my life, around high school and college to pay for things. But firewood did really well for me. As you can see, we got a lot of forest back there. But there's a lot of effort put in, a lot of labor put into firewood, a lot of energy expended, a lot of maintenance on a chainsaw, and also danger. Anytime you're working with a chainsaw, you're risking becoming a person with less limbs than you started out with. So I've kind of withdrawn from selling firewood a little bit, but there are ways to do that at scale that make a lot of sense. There's firewood processing machinery, and you can always sell things like sawmill lumber, and there's a lot of value-added products you can do with lumber. So if we have a different kind of property or different equipment at some point, that might be something else I experiment with. So let's see if I can think of anything else. We've done vegetables. Eventually, of course, we're going to delve into fruit and start selling that more, but we don't have a lot of fruit production on our property. Of course, as we've had to build things out for our property, we've also turned that into products. So I've had to build no end of sheds on this property. It seems like just building storage is all you do on a homestead. And so then I've been able to take that service elsewhere. I'm currently building a chicken coop for a client, built a lot of garden beds. So my company, Tennessee Homestead Design, is where we do our permaculture based homestead design. And so that's kept me really busy and working a lot, building a lot of fun structures. So we're kind of leaving the world of cash crops and talking more about services and goods, but that's been really good. Water catchment has been another good endeavor for us. We kind of had to figure out our own spigot kit to make 55-gallon barrels into water catchment barrels. And so once I had that kit figured out, like what I needed the components for it, I actually listed that as a product, and we've sold a lot of those. We've shipped hundreds and hundreds of those out. So if you find a solution on your farm and it's a good solution that nobody has figured out, that's potentially a product. Now we have these barrels stacked to the rafters out here. The barrels themselves I get cheap and sell well. So also if you have something you bring onto your land in vast quantities, or you find a good source of that's really cheap, that's potentially another product. So this video is going a little bit longer than most videos, but that's because we've been trying so many different things, and I'm sure I'm missing some. We've done a lot of baked goods too. Gabby's been working on that. She's the house baker, and a lot of that incorporates our farm products. We'll bake our own herbs and use our own eggs and such things like that in these baked goods. Perhaps someday we'll use our own grains as well. So that's been a way to take things from the farm or other local ingredients, and with a little bit of processing, which we kind of have to do anyway. Gabby has to bake food for our family anyway. Why not throw a few extra loaves in the oven and sell them? So far, that's what we've been trying. Gabby's trying another new product right here. This is her endeavor. She's trying a medicinal plant called ashwagandha. So far, it's doing pretty well. We'll see how that sells next year. We've tried a lot of herbs. We can propagate out herbs. This is sage here. We can propagate herbs out and try those. Of course, we're expanding our nursery from our stock. Like here we have a bunch of nitrogen fixers, and we have elderberry in totes that we rooted out from cuttings. So we're also taking our fruit trees from our food forest and turning those into products we can sell as well. So throwing a lot of stuff at the wall, trying a lot of different things, and we're excited to see where it goes and to slowly keep refining this as our farm becomes more profitable and more financially self-sufficient. So I would also love to hear your product ideas and your cash crop ideas and what you're trying on your property. We can always share more ideas and think of more things. There's a million possibilities out there, and every piece of land, every person is different. So it's just important to try a lot and see what works, and then when you find those winning products, to really run with them. Hopefully that's useful information for y'all. In the meantime, everyone, stay safe, be well, happy homesteading. And if you're in Tennessee, come on out to the Back to the Land Festival. It's going to be an amazing time of connection and networking and learning. It's September 22nd through 24th, so real soon. And backtothelandfestival.com is where the tickets are for that. If you don't have a homestead and want one, or you have a little homestead and you want a bigger one, Scrapsteading.com might be a good resource for you. Billy and I wrote a book on how to build all of this on basically no budget or very little budget. So hopefully some folks in that position will find that useful as well. In the meantime, everyone, I'll see you in the next video.